Hi, I'm Russell Kelban with the San Francisco Symphony.
I'm Richard Lonsdorf. Thank you so much.
So the video you just saw was created to give you a good sense of the SoundBox experience. What is SoundBox? It's an experimental space. It's a hub for the San Francisco Symphony. It was really designed to help the symphony tackle some key challenges by breaking down some traditional long-standing rules. We had several goals in mind when we created or we were concepting SoundBox. First, it was very, very important that we attract a younger, more diversified audience to classical music, especially when you compare it to our main hall, which is Davies Symphony Hall, where our wonderful, supportive patron base, the majority of which is over 55, over 60%. We were looking for more for SoundBox of an under 35 sect. And we wanted it to be more ethnically diverse and embrace a broader household income. The second goal, it was very important that the San Francisco Symphony musicians play a critical role, that they participate. We want to increase their profile. We want to add exposure of the San Francisco musicians. And in addition, the SoundBox initiative needed to expand the San Francisco Symphony brand, make it more flexible while still supporting the artistic excellence and high standard that the San Francisco Symphony is known for.
And it was important to us that we had a place to experiment. We weren't really willing to embark on a series of costly renovations to Davies Symphony Hall based on a hypothesis of what people might like. We really needed to pilot these concepts somewhere. So lucky for us, we had quite literally a box. It was a rehearsal room sitting almost it was sitting vacant a lot of the time, shared with San Francisco Opera. Here's a picture of it right here. This is a space designed for the rehearsal of opera. You have a fake pit. You have a stage that is the footprint of the War Memorial Opera House. And from December through April, when the opera wasn't in season, it was not being used very often by us, who were the other stakeholders in the space. It needed a lot of work, but it was available, it was convenient, it was in our building, and it was full of potential. So it was a bit of a challenge deciding where to go from there, but luckily we have at our helm someone like Michael Tilson-Thomas, who's our music director, who's known for kind of a rule-breaking approach to concerts and is a real innovator. He's been doing a lot of great work in this space, actually here in Florida at the New World Symphony, which has great technological capabilities in their own hall, and he really pushed us and inspired us to start designing this space with a lot of those principles in mind. We needed to also set clear goals about this experience, sort of deciding where we were going to go and then constantly checking in on that to make sure that we were developing this project in the right direction to achieve what we needed. We also needed buy-in from our key stakeholders. That means members of our board who had to grant the funding authorization for these capital improvements, buy-in from members of our staff who had to work together in all kinds of new ways and in really pushing their normal workload to add all of this extra experience to our offerings, and from members of our orchestra as well, who had to perform in a newly intimate and exciting environment and sort of work to interpret our existing contract in a way that actually fit what was going on in this space.
And it was very important to clearly define the SoundBox brand, keep it distinct and separate from the San Francisco Symphony brand, eventually gradually integrating the two. We need to define it in terms of the language we used, the physical space, the experience. This is the physical space of our main hall, Davies Symphony Hall, a 2,700 seat hall, versus SoundBox, which, as Richard was talking about, is essentially a black box from the start. Whereas it's a concert that you attend at Davies Symphony Hall, it's a show at SoundBox. Whereas our audience base we call them patrons, and SoundBox, they're fans. How do we communicate the repertoire during a concert at Davies Symphony Hall? It's through a tangible paper program. At SoundBox, it's 100% through a mobile app. And it's more of a traditional experience when you enter Davies Symphony Hall, whereas it's unpredictable and unexpected at SoundBox. We speak of Davies Symphony Hall of attending an event. At SoundBox, it's an experience.
And so what we've created as a tagline here is a new place for people who love music. And we think that's a really simple way of expressing a radically different experience here. And I think the best way to start talking about that is to take you from sunny Orlando, Florida, into the foggy streets of San Francisco and take a journey inside SoundBox to tell you a little bit about the space. This is actually the entrance that people use to get into SoundBox. It's a very nondescript door on the backside of Davies Symphony Hall, and it's important to note that this sign actually comes and goes in a pop-up fashion whenever the performances are happening, and then it sort of fades away into the mist of the night, much like Brigadoon. I had to do at least one musical theater reference. So it's you know, once we got past the door, that's about all we knew about the space, is where people were going to enter. But then beyond that, it was sort of a mystery. And so we had to start developing things. The experience of SoundBox begins with the sound. We had a acoustically dead space, nearly dead to the point of being unusable. And we are very lucky to have a wonderful sound company, Meyer Sound, located in Berkeley, California, right across the bay, who we have a close working relationship with. And we started talking to them about using their Constellation acoustic system, which is a system that creates an artificial acoustic within a space that isn't ideal. Many of you may be using it in various venues you administer. But we were pushing them because all of these elements that we include in SoundBox needed to maximize flexibility. We truly didn't know what we were going to need to do in that space. And so we said, well, can you create a version of Constellation that is meant to create an acoustic for all kinds of spaces? And we worked with them to create something that at a touch of a button can go from an intimate salon experience to a concert hall experience to even a very reverberant cathedral-like experience if we go into a Renaissance vein or something like that. And it's become a very important part of keeping the space alive. Then we had to approach the layout. It's a black box environment, but we decided to go in the direction of a club-like styling of this environment. We had multiple performance stages that could move and be changed as needed. And we had capacity for about 500 people while still leaving room for the people who needed to perform for them. And that we decided to divide as a mix of 300 seating and 200 standing. We used all kinds of furniture: ottomans, love seats, sofas, club chairs, beanbags on one occasion, tall boy tables, drink rails, anything that you could sort of sit on or lean against. And I have to say, it was such a permissive and flexible environment that we found people actually started sitting on the stages when they weren't in use because they just kind of wandered everywhere, and it became a job of one of the stagehands during intermission to sort of say, okay, get off the stage now, this one's in use for the next 20 minutes. And people were very amenable and sort of agreeable to this move around experience. The ambiance was the next step here, and we needed to style the place to be engaging and kind of get rid of, to quote Seb's presentation, actually, this threshold fear of entering this unfamiliar space. And so we enhanced it with a great lighting package with great video screens in all directions, and actually created custom video and lighting experiences for every single program that really enhanced and provided points of access and points of reference to the music being performed. I think we have some examples here. Yes, this is just a great example of the space in a moment of transition. You have the video screens active. You have people sitting on low furniture, little candles. You can actually see a dangling microphone here and there. That is what is feeding the sound system. Here you have a great image of people just waiting for the next piece to begin, gathered around a high table with their cocktails. It's really a fantastic experience.
And we didn't want price to be a barrier to entry. This was really important. So ticket pricing actually is only $25, a flat fee. There's no VIP, there's no reserved area. It's very democratic in nature. In terms of food and beverage, a full bar. A bar that had craft cocktails, which is very important in San Francisco. Beer and wine.
Extremely important to me.
Yeah, didn't you? That's right, that's true. Also small plates and gourmet bites. And these food items actually could be enjoyed during the entire program. So people were eating and drinking while the performance was taking place. This is an overhead shot of the bar and our fans enjoying the food and beverage. It was really essential that we allocate time, dedicate time to these fans so they can interact and socialize and chat about what was taking place and also to post and tweet. So that's why we have 2 20-minute intermissions. There were many long, let's say passionate discussions and debates about the use of mobile devices during the shows. And where we ended up was that we felt that because of the audience that we were trying to attract, that we had to have faith, that we had to trust this group, this audience, that they would self-regulate. They would not abuse the privilege. And in fact, that's exactly what happened. So people were allowed to use their mobile devices during the entire program. And they filmed, which we liked that, and we encouraged that so that they can share that and evangelize about SoundBox through social media.
So with all of these great toys and opportunities here in this flexible space, it was really another conundrum to decide what and how to perform. First of all, we had to establish exactly when are these performances happening and for how long. And so we had about 5 programs, each with 2 performances spread over the months of December through April. And one of the first key decisions we made was to start them a little later to attract kind of a late night nightlife audience. And so we had a start time of 9 p.m., but we messaged that as doors at 8, show at 9, so that people would know that they could come a little bit early, experience the environment, get a drink, and get settled and get ready for the show. The shows ended around 11 p.m. and had time for mingling afterwards, which is another key element to allow people to decompress after the experience, with the goal of getting the space shut down and closed by midnight. The concerts themselves had about 6 to 8 pieces in 3 acts of 20 minutes each. This allowed for sort of manageable small bites and programming with a general concept of shorter works, more breaks, to really allow people to digest the experience. In terms of the staging, as I mentioned, we have stages all over the space, and we were able to highlight mixed ensemble sizes, solo works, chamber works, large ensemble works, works with choruses wandering through the audience, truly anything. And we were able to move that perspective throughout the show. So I'll give you some examples here. Here's a great solo piano work with a very tight focus on one of the smaller side stages. Here you can see we did a marimba and cello duet on that same stage in a more intimate environment. Here's an example of a larger ensemble work with conductor at the end of the room, even vocalists and all kinds of things thrown in. And one of my favorite pieces was a string quartet plopped in the very middle of the audience here. You can see the illuminated faces in the side of the photo in terms of how close audience members are from the string players. And I actually sat very close to this stage with my friends during one of the shows, and one of my friends remarked to me very excitedly after this piece ended, he said, "I have never been so close to a violin and seen all the smoke that flies off of it." I didn't really have the heart to tell him it's just rosin dust, but you know, it adds to the, you know, there's this sort of gripping and visceral experience of watching orchestral music that you just cannot get in a 2,700-seat symphony hall.
By the way, what's critical there is the beer and wine only sign.
That's true. Drinks available during the piece, but only the ones that don't clink and have ice noises. That was a very important discussion.
That's right.
You know, you have to have all of these chats when the bar is only 50 feet from the music. In terms of the actual substance of the pieces here, we had to think about the styling, and we decided to go with curators, and that was the title we used, which is a conductor, a composer, some musical personality who is the host and the guide of the experience, someone to interact with the fans in the audience and give a little bit more of context to the show or a narrative to what people are seeing. Again, we use this multimedia enhancement to add further points of connection, and we're even able to incorporate some visual art elements into performances. Right here you can see a great video of this sculpture by a local guy, Oliver DeChico, that was in the pit as people walk in. It again provides that point of transition from the street to the stage, something for people to observe and discuss as they're walking into the space and finding their seats and getting their drinks. The repertoire was a great mix of old and new. It was very important to us that we could perform exactly the same kinds of things we might perform in the symphony hall with all kinds of things that we would never be able to perform in the symphony hall, side by side, right with each other. And here you can see a great list of all the composers we were able to feature in the first season of SoundBox. It truly is an eclectic mix of everyone from Bach and Monteverdi through Britten and Ravel and to Steve Reich and John Cage and Golioff and beyond. It was very unlimited in terms of what we could do in there. And in addition to this eclectic mix, we wanted it to happen in an unpredictable fashion to keep the audience excited and engaged. And I thought we could take you on a great tour of an evening at SoundBox, and who better than our incredibly eclectic and unpredictable music director, Michael Tilson Thomas. He did our first night of SoundBox in December, and he decided to create a program that would really test drive the extremes of the space. How quiet could it get? How loud could it get? What kinds of things could you do in there? And so in that first pre-concert moment, he really started with a bang with what looked like a musical terrarium as you walked into the space. This is actually a performance of John Cage's Branches, music for amplified plants. So if you look closely at that photo, you can see that there are percussionists wandering around there, plucking needles, shaking branches, rattling leaves. They all have little pickup microphones, and this sound was spatialized throughout the space with the Constellation system and enhanced with live video of close-ups of what was going on in the pit. And this was going on for an hour as people were walking in and finding their seats, and sort of set the tone for what was going to be a very wild ride. The concert began in a sacred space with works by our chorus, doing early Renaissance pieces. And then we moved upward in period to Music for Pieces of Wood by Steve Reich with our percussion section in front of this sort of gritty urban cityscape there. We took our first intermission and then came back for a piece that was unyieldingly lovely, a work by Ravel for strings, harp, and flute. Then we actually took a brief pause from music to show a piece by our friends at the SF Museum of Modern Art. We were able to work with them on this show for a short video work that thrust us back into this contemporary space for then a piece by Edgar Varese, which Michael chose because it was something that was as loud as possible to really test the extremes of the space, and I can guarantee it was. We took our second intermission and came back for this wonderful orchestral, choral, and vocal soloist work by Monteverdi, again, a performance of his Magnificat. And this is a composer that was never in the performance history of the symphony. And Michael is fond of telling a story that afterwards he was chatting with some patrons, and this young guy with cool hair came up to him and said, "You know, I've never been to the symphony before, but you know what? Now Monteverdi is my favorite composer," which is a sentence I never thought I'd hear uttered in my professional life. So truly an exciting space for music.
So how did we launch SoundBox? This unknown entity. Basically, it's like launching a club in a major city. It was a little bit scary. So we needed to pique interest, curiosity, start creating demand. And because of the audience that we were speaking to and trying to attract, it was going to primarily be digital, maybe a little bit of outdoor, targeted outdoor. What we did is we formulated partnerships with some of the key social media networks that you see there, along with some social apps and social sites that were very popular in the Bay Area. In addition to that, like I said, we had targeted outdoor. For example, chalk sketches on the sidewalk in certain neighborhoods. We had a great start date of 12/13/14.
You're welcome.
Yeah, it was great. So we just had the brand name SoundBox 12/13/14. We also implemented wild postings in targeted neighborhoods. We started to incorporate iconic images and the tagline. And here's an image of the wild postings in one of our neighborhoods. And then about 2 weeks prior to each show, pairings of shows, we started our digital ad campaign. Why 2 weeks versus a month or two? Because as I'm sure most of you know, and if I hear this one more time in a focus room, I'm going to scream, we don't plan. That's the under 35 sect. So we decided to start advertising a week or two prior. And each pairing of shows had a title that captured the theme, like here, like Sticks and Stones, or their own devices, along with the date and the ticket price. We also had T-shirts, branded T-shirts by our staff. These became in such high demand that we started selling them during the show. As a matter of fact, we have a whole bunch of San Francisco Symphony people there wearing the T-shirts. I promised their relatives they'd be on YouTube. Can you stand up? Stand up, just like show them the T-shirts. There you go.
Yeah. And I'm sorry that Steve and Diane from our Department of Modeling Services could not attend.
Right, exactly. This is all created, by the way, our in-house creative staff, a very lean team. Though actually, come to think of it, they're physically lean too, which is sort of odd. But anyway, that's we also created.
I posed for this one, I should
there
say.
There you go. Right. Yeah. So they also. It also featured. We also created some posters for sale that sold extremely well during the programming.
This is one of my favorites here. This is actually a musical instrument that became a branding experience. For our percussion show in February, we did a work by Lei Liang called Trans that was for solo percussionist on stage and a participatory element by the audience, clacking small pairs of stones together to create a rainfall effect throughout the space, which worked great with the sound system and provided an opportunity for beleaguered members of the marketing department to hand stamp hundreds and hundreds of rocks. So that they could be artfully spread about in vases and things like that as a lovely keepsake for our patrons at the end of the show. So.
There was some concern about them throwing them, but it didn't happen.
Yeah, no one threw rocks, so success.
So it was really important that we learn from our fans, and we implemented online surveys after every single show. We wanted to learn about them, what was driving them, what were their satisfaction levels, so we can improve upon it and address anything that wasn't meeting the standards or achieving our goals. Some great news. Over 50% of those that attended SoundBox, they were coming back. So we had built a loyal fan base. It skewed our audience, our fans skewed slightly female, and we achieved one of our goals, which is that approximately a third of the audience was under 35.
Did you factor that I attended several times?
So also there were psychographics, not
yes,
just demographics. And then also we did encompass a broader household income, which is really nice. We also want to figure out what was driving them. How are they learning about SoundBox? And about halfway into the series, what we found is that the fans had taken control, that it was all through word of mouth, it was through sharing emails. They had actually become evangelists for us. It got to the point, and this is a wonderful problem to have, that tickets were selling so quickly, we were sold out for every single show, that we didn't have time to spend marketing dollars. Right, I know, right?
Yeah, right.
First time in my life.
Not that they made their way to the artistic department, I'll give you that, though. Yeah.
It's like working with Jerry Lewis.
Russell has a new car.
That's right. I knew this should have been a solo act. So what were the most influential components for our fans? Why were they coming back over and over again? It really came down to the music and the programming. That was far number one. And we also closely evaluated the satisfaction levels. We wanted to see where we need to improve, what areas we need to address, and what was really working. What was really working, what was really over-indexing, it had to do with the quality of the programming. It had to do with the sound and acoustics, the ambiance, basically the experience. Really, really great news at the end of the day was that over 85% of our fans were planning to attend future shows. So now that we enter our second season, we need to figure out, okay, what do we need to do? Well, we need to emphasize our core strengths, which have to do with the programming and the experience itself. We want to continue having our fans have conversations among themselves. So we're going to start feeding them more and more assets, digital assets, images, audio clips, video clips. We experimented a bit in the first season. We had some pre-concert events about 1 hour before the show. We had groups such as our Symphonics Young Professionals group come in and speak with the curator and some musicians. That worked really, really well, so we're going to increase the number of those. We want to really expand even further the ethnic diversity of our audience. So we're going to make some special efforts to do some multicultural outreach, and we're going to continue to survey, to listen. We were actually, I have to say, the group was very nimble. When we learned that something was not indexing where we thought it should be in terms of satisfaction levels, we acted on it quickly. It were things like, it sounds minor, but trust me, for San Francisco, it's a big deal. One of the craft cocktails was not selling. So we pulled it and we put in a new one, and it jumped. We found out that we needed to try to squeeze in more seats, and we did that. And following surveys, you could see it. The satisfaction level started to improve.
And so as we look into the future of SoundBox, there's a lot of things we want to explore. First of all, we want to figure out, ultimately, how can we apply some of these learnings back into our main symphony hall? We hope that SoundBox does not forever exist in isolation because, fundamentally what we're trying to do is innovate on the art form as a whole. And we know this is not going to be easy. In fact, it's quite difficult to scale an intimate experience for 500 people up to 2,700 in a full-size symphony hall. But we're hoping that as we continue testing, several of these elements prove to be irresistible. Aspects of interactivity, aspects of styling, aspects of multimedia, talking to the audience, front of house experience, cocktail quality, and actually that may be bigger than we think. Right. But yes, it's an exciting thing to continue to monitor, and then ultimately connecting these brands. Right now, SoundBox exists in a silo next to the San Francisco Symphony brand in an unconnected manner, and we hope that as SoundBox becomes strengthened with more positive associations, we can start to have them mutually benefit each other and weave into an expanded family of symphony branding. We need to establish a sustainable funding model. Right now, SoundBox is supported by a couple key individuals and key entities within the symphony organization, and we want to make sure that that family of donors and family of corporate support grows as we expand what we're doing there and as it gains more renown. And ideally, we can expand the season. Right now, it's a very limited product that only has a few shows a year and incredible demand, so we're hoping we're able to share that with more people. I think fundamentally, as we continue on this journey, we want to, in true San Francisco fashion, continue to experiment within safe boundaries. But we hope you will all come on this experiment with us and come see us up in San Francisco. The season begins again in December and runs through April of the 15-16 season, so book your tickets now and come check it out. Thank you so much.
Thank you.